The morning sun glinted off the glass conference room table as Preston slid the company-issued tablet across the polished surface. On the high-resolution screen, a grainy security image showed me entering the Meridian corporate building last Thursday evening. It was not exactly damning evidence of any corporate espionage, but it was apparently more than enough for what they had already decided to do to me. "We have received some extremely concerning reports about your after-hours activities," Preston said. His voice was entirely neutral, practically rehearsed, but his eyes were cold and calculating. "Our employment agreement explicitly prohibits working for another company while you are employed here at our firm." Beside him, Nelson, a junior human resources director who always wore suits that were slightly too tight, let his lips curl into something that hovered dangerously between a smug smile and a condescending sneer. "We have an absolute zero-tolerance policy for this kind of betrayal," Nelson chimed in, leaning forward as if trying to physically intimidate a 48-year-old man who had seen worse things before breakfast. I felt absolutely nothing. There was no fear creeping up my spine, no sudden flash of anger, not even a mild sense of surprise. Instead, there was just a strange, buoyant lightness spreading through my chest, almost as if gravity had simply loosened its heavy hold on my shoulders. "You are terminated, effective immediately," Preston continued, pushing a crisp white termination letter toward my side of the table. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings." I did not argue. I did not try to explain that the second job was merely an unpaid advisory role, or that I was doing it on my own time. I simply nodded, offered a small, calm smile, and said, "You are entirely right. I really should focus on just one position." Their expressions flickered for a fraction of a second. A brief wave of confusion crossed their carefully constructed corporate features before they forced their faces back into professional neutrality. They had clearly expected tears, frantic pleading, or maybe a red-faced explosion of anger. They certainly did not expect this level of calm acceptance. What they could not possibly see was the massive, suffocating weight lifting off my shoulders as I placed my plastic access badge down on the table. 3 solid years of constant, unyielding anxiety of carrying an entire billion-dollar company's digital safety squarely on my own back was evaporating in a single instant. Nelson cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with my absolute composure. "We will need all of your administrative passwords and system access credentials before you leave the premises today." I kept the smile plastered on my face. "Everything is fully documented in the secure system knowledge base, exactly as company protocol requires." It was another lie, of course. The documentation did exist, but it was a lot like giving someone a complex treasure map without providing a compass. The files were technically complete, but they were practically useless without my specific contextual knowledge and years of hands-on experience. As the burly security guard walked me back to my desk, my former colleagues turned their heads to stare. Whispers broke out across the open plan office. I calmly packed my few personal items into a small cardboard box. There was a chipped ceramic coffee mug I had used every day, a small potted succulent that had somehow miraculously survived 3 years of incredibly neglectful watering, and a thick leather-bound notebook packed full of proprietary system architectures that only I truly understood. Declan, our arrogant vice president of technology, watched the entire spectacle unfold from his glass-walled corner office. His expression was completely unreadable. He made absolutely no move to intervene or speak to me, even though he knew better than anyone else in that building exactly what would happen next. When the security guard finally escorted me through the sprawling main lobby and out through the revolving glass doors, the crisp spring air hit my face like a physical blow. I breathed in deeply for what genuinely felt like the very first time in 3 long, exhausting years. By the time I reached my sensible sedan in the sprawling parking structure, my personal cell phone buzzed in my pocket with a new text message from Julian. "Are we still on for 2 o'clock this afternoon?" he asked. I pulled out my phone and quickly typed back my reply. "Yes, I am, and now I can officially accept your full-time employment offer." 3 years of painstakingly building someone else's digital empire was more than enough for one lifetime. 3 years of being the completely invisible infrastructure that kept everything running smoothly while other executives happily took all the credit and the massive bonuses. 3 years of my urgent security warnings being completely ignored, my desperate requests for additional staff being repeatedly denied, and my well-deserved promotions being consistently passed over for outside hires. Now, it was finally over, and the invisible countdown clock had officially begun ticking. My name is Silas Reynolds, and until about 45 minutes ago, I was the sole lead network security architect at a massive Fortune 500 technology company. I was the only one, in fact. This was definitely not by careful corporate design. When I was first hired, there were supposed to be 5 of us on the dedicated security team. Successive rounds of brutal budget cuts shrank that number down to 3, and then a wave of frustrated resignations eventually whittled the department down to just me. Just one exhausted 48-year-old man holding up the sky. I never actually set out to become the single most indispensable person in the entire organization. Anyone with half a brain knows that is an incredibly dangerous position to hold in modern corporate America. But with each passing financial quarter, as my promised team slowly evaporated into thin air and my daily responsibilities violently multiplied, I found myself standing alone as the sole guardian of a complex digital kingdom that was quite literally worth billions of dollars. It all started exactly 3 years ago when I was aggressively recruited away from a much smaller, quieter firm. I still vividly remember Declan's lofty promises during my final interview process. "We are actively building a world-class security team here," he had said, his eyes shining bright with what I foolishly thought was genuine enthusiasm. "You will lead a highly specialized group focusing exclusively on our proprietary back-end systems." The starting salary he offered was not exactly spectacular, but the technical challenge presented to me was absolutely irresistible. I would be building ground-up security architecture for cutting-edge technology, supposedly working alongside some of the most brilliant minds in the industry. I signed the employment contract almost immediately, foolishly believing every single word. Harsh reality arrived roughly by month 3. The very first round of what management vaguely called strategic restructuring permanently eliminated 2 senior positions on my newly formed team. By the time month 6 rolled around, another highly skilled colleague left us for significantly better pay and better hours at a rival firm. His hastily hired replacement lasted barely 4 months before a company-wide budget freeze abruptly eliminated the position entirely. "It is just a temporary situation," Declan had confidently assured me over a rushed cup of mediocre cafeteria coffee. "We will definitely staff up again next quarter once the new budget is approved." Next quarter slowly bled into next year. Next year seamlessly transformed into a vague promise to reassess the situation after the big corporate merger was finalized. The highly anticipated merger eventually came and went, making a handful of executives extremely wealthy. Yet, it was still just me sitting alone in the security operations center. Meanwhile, the underlying proprietary systems grew exponentially more complex with each passing week. Our active client base tripled in size, bringing in massive new revenue streams. The potential attack vectors and security vulnerabilities multiplied at a terrifying rate. I spent my days and nights building increasingly sophisticated, multi-layered protection measures. I found myself working late into the evenings, giving up my weekends, and ignoring major holidays just to keep pace with the constantly emerging external threats. When I raised the alarm and formally warned management about critical system vulnerabilities, my detailed emails were politely acknowledged, but the crucial action items mysteriously disappeared from the official meeting minutes. When I formally requested additional specialized staff to help manage the growing workload, I was firmly told to simply prioritize my tasks better. When I respectfully asked for a compensation adjustment that actually matched my massively expanding daily responsibilities, I received enthusiastic verbal praise instead of actual dollars in my bank account. "You are our absolute rock star, Silas," Declan would often say, clapping me firmly on the shoulder with a wide, fake grin. "Nobody understands these complex back-end systems quite like you do." That exact statement was the core of the entire problem. Nobody else did understand them. and more importantly, nobody else actually wanted to understand them. I repeatedly offered to conduct extensive training sessions for other departments, to thoroughly document the increasingly labyrinthine architecture that had organically evolved under immense operational pressure. My generous offers were always met with polite nods, tight smiles, and absolutely zero follow-through from management. Last winter, I single-handedly prevented a massive data breach that would have easily exposed millions of sensitive client financial records to the dark web. Working for 72 hours straight, barely sleeping more than a few minutes at my desk, I successfully identified the subtle intrusion pattern and rapidly built an entirely new defense layer in real time. When the terrifying crisis finally passed and the systems were secure, I received a $500 generic corporate gift card and a small two-sentence mention in the monthly company newsletter. Meanwhile, the chief executive officer, who happily took full public credit for our supposedly robust corporate security culture, received a massive seven-figure performance bonus. That was the exact moment when I fully realized what I had actually become to them. I was not an invaluable, highly respected team member. I was completely invisible. I was the silent, unappreciated plumbing that nobody ever notices or thinks about until a pipe bursts and floods the entire building with raw sewage. I desperately tried one final time, scheduling a serious, sit-down meeting with Declan and the entire executive management team to discuss the mounting risks. Our current security staffing model is completely unsustainable and dangerously fragile. I clearly explained to them, carefully showing them detailed charts, historical data trends, and direct industry comparisons. We need at least 3 more dedicated security specialists immediately just to maintain this current architecture properly. Declan nodded his head sympathetically, performing his usual routine. Right after the fourth quarter financial results are published, he promised smoothly, "We are just caught in a temporary holding pattern right now." I had heard that exact same tired line for 3 solid years. Without proper staffing and cross-training, this specific system architecture requires continuous, hands-on maintenance from someone who deeply understands its entirety. I warned them, my voice tight with frustration. If I were hit by a speeding bus tomorrow morning, you would all have serious, systemic problems within a matter of days. You would be facing catastrophic, company-ending failures within a few weeks. The chief financial officer, a man who only cared about quarterly profit margins, frowned deeply. "It sounds to me like we simply need better written documentation, not more expensive headcount on the payroll." I actually felt something small and vital break inside my chest right then and there. "I have submitted comprehensive, detailed documentation requests for 18 straight months," I replied coldly. "They have been intentionally deprioritized and ignored by this exact committee every single quarter." An uncomfortable, heavy silence followed my statement, quickly replaced by smooth redirection, vague postponements, and more empty promises. I left that stifling conference room knowing, with absolute certainty, that nothing was ever going to change, and that I desperately needed to change my own life before this job quite literally killed me. My physical health was rapidly deteriorating from the stress. My personal relationships were severely strained by the constant, unpredictable work emergencies. Something eventually had to give, and it was not going to be me anymore. Then came the major national cybersecurity conference in the sprawling convention center downtown. I was never originally supposed to attend that event. The department travel and training budgets had been completely frozen for over a year, but the lead event organizer was an old college friend of mine who generously managed to secure me a coveted guest speaking slot on the topic of adaptive threat response architectures. The company simply could not refuse the opportunity for free industry publicity, so they begrudgingly allowed me to go. That was precisely where I first met Julian Harper, the esteemed head of security for our largest, most aggressive industry competitor. He caught up with me in the crowded hallway immediately after my presentation ended. "I was deeply impressed by the complex theoretical framework you outlined up there on stage," Julian said, his eyes bright with genuine professional interest. "The practical implementation of those concepts must be absolutely fascinating to oversee. I would sincerely love to hear more about how you have personally actualized these theoretical concepts in a live production environment. We ended up standing in that busy hallway and talking for hours, carefully avoiding sharing any specific proprietary details about our respective employers' internal networks. We were just two seasoned professionals deeply engrossed in discussing high-level theoretical approaches and complex architecture philosophies. It was honestly the very first real, engaging professional conversation I had experienced in years. As the massive conference finally drew to a close, Julian confidently handed me his thick, embossed business card. "We could seriously use your unique perspective and deep experience on our new internal security framework," he suggested smoothly. "It would be strictly an advisory role. Just weekends only, nothing operational, and absolutely nothing that would create any conflict of interest with your current employer." The generous consulting fee he casually mentioned for just a few hours of weekend work significantly exceeded my entire monthly salary. For the very first time in 3 years, I actually felt respected and valued for my specialized knowledge. I hesitated for only a brief moment before graciously accepting his intriguing offer. The work was exactly as promised, purely advisory in nature. I spent my time carefully reviewing their proposed future systems, never once touching their actual live infrastructure, and doing absolutely nothing that violated any corporate confidentiality agreements. It was completely non-operational work that did not negatively impact either company in any way. For exactly 8 weeks, I lived a strange, exhausting double life. During the long weekdays, I was desperately maintaining the fragile digital fortress that protected billions in corporate assets, completely unrecognized and grossly undervalued by my management team. On the weekends, I was highly respected, genuinely heard, and compensated appropriately for my hard-earned expertise by Julian and his team. Then came last Thursday afternoon. I had carefully parked my car 2 blocks away from Julian's modern office building for our regular weekly advisory meeting. Unfortunately, someone from my company must have recognized my vehicle on the street. Someone made a series of completely unfounded assumptions. Someone high up the corporate ladder decided I was entirely dispensable. What those arrogant executives completely failed to understand in their rush to punish me was that their entire security infrastructure required highly specialized manual weekly adjustments that only I knew how to properly perform. These were complex, necessary adjustments I had desperately tried to teach others to do, but nobody ever had the time or the desire to learn. They were the critical, preventative adjustments that single-handedly stopped the exact catastrophic cascade of system failures I had warned them about repeatedly in my ignored reports. As the heavy-set security guard slowly escorted me out of the building and into the bright sunlight, my cell phone suddenly lit up with an urgent text message from Julian. "The advisory board just officially approved your full-time offer," the message read. "We want you as our chief security architect. We will triple your current base salary, give you a dedicated team of 8 engineers, and you can start whenever you are ready." I stopped walking and looked back at the towering, gleaming glass building where I had willingly sacrificed 3 years of my life. The security guard quickly averted his eyes, clearly uncomfortable with his unpleasant assignment. "Is it really worth it?" I asked him quietly. "Working for people who will discard you this easily without a second thought?" He had no verbal answer for me, just a carefully practiced, neutral expression. But I clearly saw the unmistakable flash of recognition in his tired eyes. He understood exactly what I was asking him. I pulled out my phone and quickly typed my reply to Julian. "I can start first thing Monday morning." What my arrogant former employers did not realize as they so triumphantly rushed me out the door was that in precisely 72 hours, right during the chaotic end of quarter financial processing window when their data traffic historically peaked, their entire fragile system would desperately require the specialized manual maintenance that only I performed. It was the exact same routine maintenance I had been begging them to let me train other employees to handle for over a year. This was not a malicious act of sabotage. This was not some grand scheme of revenge. It was just the natural, inevitable consequence of systematically ignoring expert warnings and foolishly valuing digital systems over the actual human beings who built and maintained them. As I slowly drove away from the corporate campus for the very last time, my cell phone began to ring loudly in the cup holder. I glanced down and saw Declan's name flashing on the screen. I just smiled, reached down, and deliberately turned off the phone's ringer. The invisible countdown clock was officially ticking, and there was nothing he could do to stop it now. By late Friday afternoon, I had officially signed Julian's generous employment contract. I was now the chief security architect, commanding a dedicated, fully funded team of 8 highly skilled specialists, earning triple my previous pathetic salary, and holding a significant chunk of valuable equity options. The immense sense of relief was intensely physical, almost like putting down a crushing weight I had carried for so long that I had completely forgotten what normal felt like. I spent the entire weekend calmly preparing for my exciting new role, sleeping more deeply and peacefully than I had in years. There were absolutely no terrifying emergency alerts waking me in a panic at 3 o'clock in the morning. There were no unreasonable expectations of an immediate response, just blissful silence and much-needed rest. When Monday morning finally arrived, I strode into the impressive Meridian corporate headquarters, dressed in a sharp new suit. The massive lobby, with its soaring ceilings and abundance of natural light, was clearly designed to impress visiting clients. But it was the immediate, palpable level of respect that struck me the most. "We are absolutely thrilled that you are joining us, Silas," Julian said warmly, giving me a proper, comprehensive orientation tour of the sprawling campus. "Let me introduce you to your new team." The simple word sounded completely foreign to my ears after so many years of bearing solitary, crushing responsibility. There were 8 highly trained specialists sitting in the spacious Security Operations Center, each with clearly defined, manageable roles that perfectly complemented one another. They all looked up at me with genuine professional curiosity, not the desperate, panic-stricken relief I had grown so accustomed to seeing whenever I appeared to solve my former company's latest self-inflicted crisis. "We have heard incredible things about your adaptive security approach from Julian," said Maxwell, a brilliant threat analysis specialist who had sharp, observant eyes and quick hands. "I am really looking forward to learning from you and seeing how we can implement those ideas here." By the time lunch rolled around, we were all deep in an animated, highly technical discussion about their current network architecture. They had excellent questions, thoughtful and piercing ones. They respectfully challenged my core assumptions, offered creative alternatives, and actively built upon my ideas, rather than just mindlessly implementing them. This was exactly what true professional collaboration felt like. I had almost completely forgotten the sensation. Meanwhile, all the way across town at my previous employer, the very first subtle warning signs were surely beginning to appear. I did not need any corporate spies to tell me what was happening over there. The complex rhythms and fragile heartbeat of their systems were as deeply familiar to me as my own pulse. I knew for a fact that Monday afternoon would inevitably bring the first severe authentication bottlenecks as the weekly automated credential refresh cycle aggressively tried to execute without the crucial manual override that I always performed. By Tuesday morning, their server log files would begin to rapidly overflow, drastically slowing down all external response times. By Wednesday afternoon, exactly 72 hours after my forced departure, the devastating, cascading system failures would begin in earnest right during the peak of their end-of-quarter financial processing. I honestly felt a tiny twinge of guilt, not for what was about to happen to the company itself, because I had warned them repeatedly, but for the innocent, hard-working rank-and-file employees who would inevitably suffer right alongside the arrogant executives who had made the terrible decisions. My cell phone buzzed loudly on my desk at exactly 4:52 on Monday afternoon. The caller ID boldly displayed Declan's name. I let it go straight to voicemail without a second thought. "Hey Silas, it is Declan here." His recorded voice sounded remarkably casual, forced into an easygoing tone. "Look, there seems to be some minor issue with the primary authentication servers today. It is probably just a simple configuration thing that got overlooked. Give me a quick call back when you get this message. Thanks." His voice was so casual, pretending it was just a small technical hiccup and not the beginning of the end. I calmly deleted the message. Tuesday morning brought 3 more frantic calls from increasingly senior people within the IT department. By the early afternoon, the tone of the voicemails had changed dramatically. "This is Patricia from the Executive Operations Office," a stern voice announced. "Our core systems are currently experiencing significant, unexplainable slowdowns. The entire internal technical team has been completely unable to resolve the ongoing issue. The Chief Executive Officer has personally authorized me to discuss immediate terms for your temporary return as a highly paid consultant to address these urgent matters." I simply texted her back a single polite line. "I am exclusively focusing on one position now, exactly as suggested during my termination meeting. Here at Meridian, I was fully immersed in building something entirely new and robust, rather than desperately trying to keep a sinking ship afloat. My team and I meticulously mapped out a comprehensive security architecture that seamlessly incorporated the very best elements of my theoretical models with their already solid existing infrastructure." Julian checked in on us regularly, but he never nervously hovered over my shoulder. "How are you settling in so far?" he asked on Tuesday afternoon. "It is strangely quiet," I admitted with a small laugh. "Having adequate resources actually being heard. It is a big adjustment." He nodded understandingly. "We have all worked at terrible places that absolutely refuse to value true expertise. That is exactly why our employee retention rate here is triple the industry average." Late Tuesday night, my personal email inbox loudly chimed with an urgent message from Declan. The subject line was written in all capital letters and flagged as critical. "Critical system failure is completely imminent," the desperate email read. "Please just name your consulting hourly rate. We will pay whatever you want. Please respond immediately." I quietly closed my laptop screen without bothering to type a reply. They were finally beginning to understand the true cost of their arrogance. Wednesday morning dawned bright and incredibly clear. At our morning team meeting, my new staff and I finalized our comprehensive implementation plan for the upgraded security architecture. The creative energy in the room was absolutely electric. Here were 8 brilliant minds happily building something together, with each individual contribution being actively acknowledged and deeply valued. My cell phone began vibrating continuously in my pocket around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I politely silenced it during our collaborative planning session. When I finally checked the screen later, I had 17 missed calls and twice as many frantic text messages. One particularly desperate message was from Preston in Human Resources. "Legal has thoroughly reviewed the specific circumstances of your termination," his message read. "We may have acted far too hastily. Please call my direct line urgently." Another message came from Nelson. "Whatever ridiculous amount they are paying you over there, we will immediately double it. Please call me back." The most telling message was marked as critical, sent directly from the Chief Executive Officer himself. "Our national corporate clients are rapidly losing all access to their secure accounts. There are massive regulatory implications at play here. An emergency board meeting is currently in progress. Call me immediately." I felt absolutely no satisfaction reading those panicked words, just a hollow, sad confirmation of everything I had desperately warned them about for 3 years. They had built a massive, precarious digital kingdom entirely on my tired shoulders, and then they had carelessly pushed me away without ever understanding what would inevitably collapse. That evening, as I drove home from my new stress-free office, a breaking news alert brightly flashed across my car's dashboard display screen. A major unprecedented service outage has been reported at a leading financial technology provider. The automated voice read aloud. "Hundreds of thousands of sensitive client accounts are currently completely inaccessible." There was no specific company name mentioned just yet, but I knew with absolute certainty that the catastrophic mainstream media exposure would hit hard by tomorrow morning. It would happen exactly when furious corporate clients could not access their critical quarterly financial reports, when aggressive government regulators inevitably started asking very sharp questions, and when the company's publicly traded stock began to plummet. When I finally arrived home, I opened a nice bottle of red wine I had been saving for a special occasion and sat out on my quiet balcony, peacefully watching the vibrant sunset over the city skyline. My phone suddenly lit up again, showing Declan's private cell number. This time, I calmly tapped the screen and answered. "Silas," I said, keeping my voice perfectly level. His voice sounded incredibly ragged, completely destroyed by exhaustion and pure panic. "Everything is failing, Silas. Everything. It is a complete cascade. The sequential authentication breakdowns are rapidly cascading straight into the core transaction processing layer. Nobody here knows how to stop it." "I warned you," I said quietly into the receiver. "For 3 long years I warned you this would happen." I know we did," he practically sobbed. The terrified admission sounded physically painful for him to force out. "Just tell me what to do, please. Name any price you want." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my wine. "It is not about the price anymore, Declan. It is about actual value." "We valued you," he pleaded defensively. "No," I interrupted him firmly. "You only valued what I produced for you. You never valued me enough to actually listen when I explicitly told you the workload was unsustainable. You did not value me enough to staff the department properly, to compensate me fairly for my time, or to credit me honestly for my vital work." A heavy, suffocating silence stretched between us on the line. "You know what would have easily prevented this massive disaster," I continued, my voice steady. "Any one person in that entire building besides me understanding how these complex systems actually work. Anyone taking just 5 minutes to actually read the detailed warnings I painstakingly documented in every single quarterly review. Anyone listening to me when I explicitly stated that this exact nightmare scenario would happen if I ever left the company." His ragged breathing was the only response I received. "The comprehensive recovery procedure does exist," I finally told him, feeling a tiny shred of pity. "It is located directly in the disaster recovery documentation I submitted to you late last year. It is the exact same crucial documentation that your committee formally deprioritized because you claimed I was handling everything so well on my own." I calmly ended the call, turned off my cell phone completely, and went back to enjoying my wine. Thursday morning, I arrived at Meridian to find Julian waiting for me in the lobby. "Have you seen the morning news?" he asked, holding out his tablet. The headline was stark. "Major tech failure erases billions in market value." Beneath it was a massive photo of my former company's headquarters. "Their entire corporate client database is completely locked down," Julian said grimly. "Transaction processing has been down for 16 solid hours and counting. Their publicly traded stock has already dropped 40% since the market opened. They have been desperately calling our executive office," Julian continued, "trying to reach you through our switchboard for emergency support. They are vaguely threatening legal action, wildly claiming you somehow sabotaged their systems before leaving." My stomach dropped slightly, but Julian held up a reassuring hand. "Our legal team has already reviewed your contract and your exit procedures. You are completely clean. They are just desperate and looking for a convenient scapegoat." As I walked into my new office, my cell phone, which I had finally turned back on, displayed 57 missed calls. The last voicemail was from Winston Crawford, the board chair himself. "Silas, this is Winston. The board has officially removed several executives this morning, including Preston and Declan. We fully recognize the systemic failures that led to your departure. Please call me directly to discuss how we might move forward." I sat with this message for a long time. At our afternoon meeting, Julian pulled me aside. "They are offering an astronomical consulting fee for emergency recovery assistance," he told me. "1 single day of your time, done remotely. No ongoing commitment. What do you think?" I considered my options. I pressed the call button and dialed Winston's private number. "Thank you for returning my call," Winston said, his voice carrying the strained politeness of someone unused to begging. I kept my tone perfectly neutral. "I understand your company is experiencing some technical difficulties." "Difficulties would be a massive understatement," Winston admitted. "The entire infrastructure is non-functional. We are prepared to offer substantial compensation for your immediate assistance." "Name your figure." "My emergency consulting rate is $50,000 per hour," I said evenly. "I require a 4-hour minimum engagement, with payment completely in advance to my specified account. I also have additional strict conditions. Winston did not hesitate for a second. Done. What are your conditions? First, I work entirely remotely, I told him. Second, I provide verbal instructions only. Your remaining team actually implements the fixes. Third, I require a formal, public letter of apology, acknowledging that I repeatedly warned the executive team about these exact vulnerabilities and was completely ignored. Winston paused for a moment, clearly weighing the massive legal implications, but ultimately agreed. Finally, I demanded, you must immediately create and fully fund the dedicated security team structure I originally proposed 3 years ago with market-rate salaries. We agree to all of your terms, he finally said. Defeated. Within 30 minutes, my bank account registered the massive wire transfer. For the next 4 hours, I patiently guided their panicked technical team through the complex recovery process over a secure video call. By the evening, their systems were finally stabilizing. It was way too late to prevent the massive, permanent damage to their corporate reputation and stock price, but just soon enough to avoid a complete, total collapse. 6 months later, Meridian officially announced that our new security consulting division, which I now proudly led, had become the fastest-growing segment of the entire company. We had even absorbed 3 of my former employer's largest corporate clients. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is succeeding so incredibly visibly that they must forever live with the painful knowledge of exactly what they lost.